Good afternoon. My name's Emily Butler. I'm the curator of the Conversations program. Thank you all so much for being with us this afternoon. The aim of Conversations is to expand the dialogue beyond the walls of the art fair to engage with important local projects and exhibitions. And today we're really delighted to be honoring and celebrating 4 of the most important artist residency and studio spaces here in Miami and Florida. And I'm really looking forward to hearing today from these 4 institutional leaders on their plans to continue to nurture artists' careers and expand their organizations. So we're thrilled to have with us on stage Cathy Leff, the Executive Director of Bakehouse Art Complex, Esther Park, the Vice President of Programming at Oolite Arts, Sadie Woods, the Residency Director at Atlantic Center for the Arts, Lorie Mertes, the Executive Director of Locust Projects, and I'm really thrilled that we have Julia Halperin, journalist and co-founder of the Burns Halperin Report, who will be moderating the panel today. There'll be a chance to ask some questions at the end of the panel, but please do give our speakers another very warm round of applause and enjoy the conversation.
Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Not yet. Yes, okay, wonderful. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. I am Julia Halperin, and I am delighted to be moderating this very special edition of Art Basel Conversations, artist-led residencies, Seedbeds for exchange in Florida. Go in and out.
Yeah.
Can I get a?
Hello,
That's
hello.
my Britney Spears mic.
Testing.
How's that? Are we good? Oh, wonderful. So I want to start by getting a better sense of who is here today. So raise your hand if you're an artist. Okay, critical mass. Raise your hand if you're a collector. Okay, raise your hand if you're an arts administrator. Okay, and raise your hand if you're from Florida. Wonderful. So we have a local heavy crowd. That's fantastic. I wanted to start with a tiny bit of history about residencies. Residencies became a larger part of the art ecosystem and gained steam in the early 20th century, which was a time when day-to-day life started to become a lot noisier, a lot more hectic, a lot more frantic. It was when, the automobile and the radio came into existence. And I think it's fair to say that, over 100 years later, life is even more busy and noisy and hectic than it was then, and the need for artists to have space to work and to think has become even more critical. So Florida is home to any number of high-profile residencies. Some of you may have heard of the Rauschenberg Foundation Residency on Captiva Island or the Fountainhead Residency in Miami. And what I think is so interesting about our panelists is that they represent a really broad definition of that term. All of them in one way or another bring artists together under one roof and give them perhaps the most important thing, which is space to work. And for many, that is just one part of a much broader network of work that they do. So thinking about artists in space brings up lots of big and fun and thorny questions about accessibility and affordability and the creative process. And I'm very much looking forward to getting into all of it with our illustrious panel, who I will introduce now. And then they'll each give a short introduction to their organization and their program. We'll have a chat, and then we'll open it up to questions at the end. So these are abbreviated bios. There are full ones on the site. All of these panelists have bios that we could just read them all for the whole talk. But let's start with Cathy. Cathy Leff has been executive director of the Bakehouse Art Complex since 2018, where she has been leading the physical and programmatic transformation of Miami's oldest and largest artist-serving organization. She previously served as director of the Wolfsonian FIU. So Cathy, to kick off, can you tell us a little bit about how your program operates?
So when I joined Bakehouse in 2018, half the space was empty because it had become too unaffordable to artists. It had existed since 1986 as a working home and an affordable working home to artists. So we sort of switched the business model because it was at the time that space was becoming a premium. There were fewer artist spaces that existed. So basically, we provide ongoing, we don't have terms, we provide more than 100 working artists, studio space, infrastructure, creative and professional development opportunities. We hold them accountable for how they use their space, and that's how we have turnover if they don't use it well. And basically, the spaces are subsidized anywhere from 50 to 100% based on what an artist can afford to pay. We've been, for the past 5 years, working with our neighborhood because we own a large 2.5 acre site, which is very underutilized. I mean, the main building is in what was once the first industrial bakery in Florida. So we've really been trying to focus on attracting, retaining, and sustaining talent in Miami by providing affordable studio space and community, as well as been working with our neighborhood for the past 5 years, well, first 3 years, to do a plan to save a neighborhood that was deteriorating, us at the same time, and knowing that the way that we could save ourselves and really put more into our mission was to add affordable housing for artists to our site. So in 2021, the city of Miami, after a very participatory community planning process, designated our neighborhood revitalization district, which gave Bakehouse the right to add affordable housing and other uses to our site. We've selected a developer partner, and we're in a negotiation now to come up with the right construct for housing, cultural uses, and it's complicated. But ultimately, we're hoping over the next 5 years we'll be able to deliver on our vision to have a artist-embedded, community-connected, live-work cultural campus that serves both Miami artists and others, as well as the greater community.
Thank you. I look forward to talking a little bit more about how that sort of cultural campus operates as we get further in. Next, we have Lorie Mertes, who has been Executive Director of Locust Projects, Miami's longest-running alternative art space since 2017. She has held administrative and curatorial posts at the National Museum of Women for the Arts, the McColl Art Center, and the Miami Art Museum. Lorie, can you give us your elevator?
Elevator speech. Well, as you said, we're Miami's longest-running alternative art space, founded by artists for artists in Wynwood in 1998. And it was the artists really trying to find a way to provide opportunities for themselves to show their work and to continue to keep a critical dialogue going and build community. They'd all just graduated from an MFA program in New York, and within that sort of space, you get to have that exchange. So they were trying to find that space. Locust, over the years, became known for supporting experimental and mostly site-specific, ambitious new work. And when we say alternative art space, we're a space that gives artists the time, the space, and the resources to create ambitious new work that perhaps a gallery, it's not work that's sellable, and it's not also typically work that a museum would show, in the sense that we have this, like what I like to call a culture of yes, where we support some very ambitious and sometimes a little crazy ideas. We've had an artist take a jackhammer to our floors. Daniel Arsham famously in 2014, took out a 2-foot deep, 20-foot diameter slab of concrete. Ruben Ochoa had done that first in one of our locations. And also above ground. I see this mouth like dropping open. Yes, that's exactly it. Above ground swimming pools with synchronized swimming. Hanging from the rafters, we have dump trucks of soil and night gardens. But it is a space that's a laboratory for artists to really experiment, do something that they can't do in their practice, that their studio space also physically can't allow. You're seeing an image here. We're now in our 4th home in Little River area, which is 8,000 square feet. It's double our previous size. So that space, time, and resources, the residency component, to get back to that, Locust has quietly had a residency almost by its 3rd show. They had a website, they do an open call, and so the process of building an exhibition, their project in space, requires the time to be here. And because the focus has never been hyper-local. It's always been a local artist and someone from outside of Miami. And so this informal residency started for several years. It was a couch, a cooler, and a not-so-clean bathroom. It was artist-run, and they were young people and had other priorities. But eventually, and what's interesting is actually the Fountainhead residency came out of our artists. It was Catherine and Dan Meixell who said, we have a house. They loved having artists around. We got to the stage where an artist like Theaster Gates was like, I'm not staying there. And so they ended up putting up artists for a few years, and eventually Locust got its own apartment, formalized its residency program with a house that was literally just down the street from Locust. The artists have 24/7 keys, access to the space. It's really about the trust to give artists that time, space, and resources. And just to finish, when I came on board in 2017, we added resources for specifically local artists that had previously been overseen by the then dissolved residency program, which was Cannonball. They had a live, work, wonderful space. They had dissolved due to financial issues. And we took on their Wavemaker Warhol regional regranting grants. So we give away up to $60,000 a year to 12 to 14 artists get $6,000 grants each, plus research and development smaller grants. So we award that every year. We've given away more than $550,000 in the last 12 years of that program. And we also provide artists of all disciplines in Miami with access to pro bono legal services. So supporting the career of being an artist is the other aspect. And of course we do, every summer we turn things over to the next generation, really supporting them in experimenting and being exposed to the arts in our practice.
Thank you, Lorie. Next, we have Esther Park, Vice President of Programming for Oolite Arts, one of Miami's largest support organizations for visual artists. She moved to Miami in 2003 and previously held roles at the Museum of Contemporary Art in North Miami, the Adrian Arsht Center for the Performing Arts, and National Young Arts Foundation. So Esther, tell us a little bit about what makes Oolite's residency program distinct.
Thank you, Juliet. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Also, how's everyone feeling? Yes?
Good.
Very tired. I know. It's we're like, what
They're happy
day
to
is it?
sit. I'm
Yeah,
happy to
we're
sit.
happy to sit. So I work currently as the Vice President of Programming for Oolite Arts, formerly called Art Center South Florida. We just had our big open studio and brunch this morning. As you know, Art Center South Florida, for those that don't, they had 2 city blocks on Lincoln Road. Everyone's familiar with Lincoln Road. That just, yes, there's like the Nike store if you need your Apple, watch fix. There's the Apple store. But almost 40 years ago, there was pretty much nothing. So it was a desolate area. And in 1984, a group of local artists decided to make this bold move to purchase these office buildings. And there they housed over 50 artist studios, artists like Felix Gonzalez-Torres, Teresita Fernandez, Jose Parlar. Pretty much anyone that wanted to escape New York during the winter had a studio space in Art Center. So Art Center has a deep-rooted history of building the artist community, particularly the contemporary art community here in Miami. And fast forward in 2016, the building was sold. And for, I won't say the amount, but you can Google it, but for a lot of money, as you know, real estate does work. And there, with that endowment, we are on the pursuit to build a new campus, but we still own a property still on Lincoln Road. It houses 14 artist studios. And I'm very proud to say some of our residents are here. Hello, Youssef. So please go visit his studio space. But we currently have 14 artist studios. There's an exhibition space. We do countless public programming in that space and elsewhere. We partner with Locust Projects for a Curator's Talk. And we also have a signature program called Home and Away, which I think that's the slides if you are seeing, is an exchange program with other residencies throughout the country, where we bring a cohort of Miami artists to these amazing world-class artist residencies like Anderson Ranch, like Atlantic Center for the Arts. So it's been a really great program. And also, speaking of direct support, we also do an annual visual arts award called the Ellies, and it's named after our founder, Ellie Schneiderman, where we provide up to $500,000 of unrestricted grants to working artists here in Miami. And we're also proud to say we have done this. This is our 6th year, and we have essentially given out, I guess, I can't do the math because it's a Saturday, $500,000 times 6.
$3 million.
$3 million to working artists in our community. So we're really excited. And yeah, so we love artists. And that's some of our cohorts that you're looking at Anderson Ranch. So
Thank you, Esther. Last but not least, we have Sadie Woods, an award-winning post-disciplinary artist, independent curator, and DJ. She works as the Curatorial and Residency Director at Atlantic Center for the Arts, a nonprofit interdisciplinary artist community and arts education facility in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Take it away.
Yes. So Atlantic Center for the Arts is in New Smyrna Beach, which is just south of Daytona, in the Orlando area. And we have residencies right now 4 times a year. We host 3 mentoring artists each residency, which is a unique model. So we have established artists that lead a cohort of artists who work with them for 3 weeks on campus. They live there. They share studio space. We have multiple shared studios on campus, which is a music studio, a black box theater, a media studio, a painting, drawing, sculpture, dance, and writer studio, and a library. So they're able to work in those spaces together in their cohorts for 3 weeks, and it is process-based, so there's not a requirement for a final product, which also makes the residency unique in that way. And it gives artists time to just process, work on existing ideas, work on new ideas, or find new folks to collaborate during their time there. And then we have an open studios at the end of the residency to celebrate them at the end. And so that's kind of the format of the residency program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So some of you mentioned this, but all of these programs were founded by artists. And I think anyone who has spent time with artists knows that artists know what artists need in a way that civilians don't. And so I wonder if you can all discuss a little bit how the fact that you were founded by artists and those origins shape the decisions that you have made and the decisions that you make today. Cathy, let's start with you.
Yeah, so similar to, we have a very similar history to Oolite. Originally, Bakehouse Art Complex was part of the South Florida Art Center. Mm-hmm. We were joined at the hips, and the organization was priced out of Coconut Grove during an era of revitalization. And so that's how Bakehouse came into existence. It was a group of artists. Some of them wanted to go to Miami Beach and sought city funds to be able to acquire their own site. What was amazing is that this group of artists had the prescience to understand how important it would be to own property. And when other artists at the time, and very few cultural institutions at the time, owned their own property. So the South Florida Art Center went to Miami Beach, got community development block grant funding to acquire its building and the then blighted Lincoln Road. The artists, what ultimately became Bakehouse Art Complex, went to the city of Miami, got money to renovate an abandoned 1926, which was the first industrial bakery in South Florida. So that's our main working home now. I think the fact that, I think it was our organization, again, was founded by artists for artists, and to ensure that there'd be affordable art-making spaces in perpetuity in Miami. Obviously, it wasn't such a grand scale it was 60 working artists, but definitely the fact that they bought the property was pretty amazing. And I think that everything that we've done now, we really look at ourselves as a platform for art making and for really fostering collaboration, creativity, and providing space, opportunity, and community to artists. So I think that everything that we're doing now, this idea of using our campus, or using what we call it's not really a campus at this point. Part of it's a derelict site, but we like to think of it as a future really interesting, cultural campus. There is a lot of cultural production there, and it's very embedded in and connected to the community that we're in. We're in a residential neighborhood, because most of the people who lived in the neighborhood worked at the bakery or in the garment district, which was now Wynwood Art Walls. But I think that what we learned most from the artist, or even what we're doing now, is really all artist informed. In 2018, when we realized that half of our spaces were empty because artists couldn't afford the rent, we raised this fund to populate it with really interesting artists who were coming out of Miami, who had attended New World School of the Arts or Dash. So from the time they were 13, they were thinking about being artists and had developed portfolios, and then went off to great schools. They went to Cooper Union or SVA or Cal Arts or RISD, MICA. They went to the best schools and then wound up back in Miami because they had student debt, or they had friends, or they felt irrelevant where they went to school, or they couldn't afford to stay there. And then instead of getting into a studio, they got into 5 jobs. So when we provided, we realized that, there was this group of artists that practice was unattainable, and that was the group that we were going to really focus on since we had empty space. And so in providing the empty space to that population of artists and really diversifying the mix, so it was really reflective of art making in Miami, we realized that, I'd walk around and say, you had a free space, and why weren't you there for 3 weeks? And they go, but we were there at 2 a.m. I have 5 jobs, and I'm a butcher, my car broke, and I had to take another job. And so we just realized that what the artists were telling us is that even if they had a free studio, that was insufficient to be able to dedicate time to a practice if they had to work 5 jobs to sustain living and the cost of living and potentially a family and student debt. So our eureka moment really came just from the artists. What do they need? I mean, at first they needed space for art making, and that's how they founded the organization. And then 40 years later, as real estate costs, and Miami has rapidly urbanized and been very successful, and this phenomenon of affordability is not just a Miami issue, it's of any city that's rapidly urbanized. But we love the idea that we're in an urban context and that we're really have a diversity of cultures represented under one roof. And so I think that, this next phase of really bringing our art making spaces up to 21st century practices, because basically the building was retrofitted in the 80s and we haven't done much to change its configuration, though the artists have made every square inch of it work and useful. But I think the idea of housing really was driven by an artist telling us that we can't stay here if we can't afford to live in the city. Yeah. So I think that everything that we've done has been informed by the community and has been, and with their active participation and soliciting their participation.
And Lorie, we know that your founders may have not felt artists needed a squeaky clean bathroom, but what did they recognize that they did need, and how did the origins shape how you're thinking today?
Yeah, we've remained artist-centered since, from that artist-centered mission has been sustained. And even though I've been a curator for 30 plus years, my role is not to be a curator putting forward my curatorial vision. We stay true to the founders, really focus on not being art trend or art curator centered. We have an open call process that really sustains. I stay separated from it. It is peer reviewed, so there's always 2 past exhibiting artists. This is really important to the artists to know that it's their peers and those who've shown previously at Locust, who are the ones who are reviewing. I don't see we just had 477 applications for the project room, which is groundbreaking. We always hover around 350. I won't see that list until we have a conversation for the last 20. And I only come at it from, is this feasible? Can this really work in the space? ADA, accessible, those kinds of things. And then I really look at it for diversity of media and backgrounds and to be reflective of Miami. So that's one aspect. And that 24/7 access you can't speak enough about. I've worked in museums pretty much most of my career, except for the last several years at Locust, and that's just not possible in big institutions, but it is essential for artists who have multiple jobs and gigs just to kind of work on their own terms. We do have artists on our board, and we have the 2 founders plus 2 rotating every 2 years, and then they have term limits of 2 term limits of up to 4 years, and then we have 2 honorary artist board members who also are active but not a voting role. So we sustain that aspect as well in our program. We also employ artists, like many of us do here. We're wage certified, which means we pay artists what is a minimum based on what our budget is. We actually exceed most of those wage standards in terms of every artist gets an artist fee. Every person who reviews serves on a panel, a jury of any shape or size, for whether it's the Wavemaker grants or open call, they all get a fee. We pay everybody who participates in programming. We employ artists as our staff, also as our collaborators and fabricators and photographers and videographers. So we are kind of a major employer within the city for artists and creatives in particular. So that keeps us also, that point of perspective from the artist's eye is always present. The new aspect, which of course all of us are going to talk about at some point in time, it really is about sort of the sort of economic equation here in Miami. But with our new space, we also have space to be able to provide the artists who are showing and going to build their projects, they can have a studio space within the space. And then this summer, we provided an open call for teaching artists to have studio space. So we've had 2 teaching artists in residence for 6 months who live in South Miami, Lonnie and Shire, Lonnie Johnson, Shire Reagans, who've been our lab instructors, but also teaching artists. They've taught at PAM and other places. And just being able, they have families, they have, and like I said, they live far away. To be able to have that space and time, they've been able to produce all new work in just this 6-month period. So space is essential, time is essential, but also the resources. So, and again, that's kind of where we build out from in terms of everything we do.
Esther, what about you? Where do you see the artist fingerprints in
Oh, yeah, I think, what's interesting to kind of describe like the art ecosystem is that, we're here at Art Basel, which is an art fair. And what dictates the fair is the market, right? It's the dealers, it's the galleries. When you look at a museum, right, what dictates the museum's kind of mission and programming? Curatorial, right? Exhibitions, dead artists mostly. But residencies are unique because the what dictates residencies are artists, living artists. And so I think that the core mission of all of our residencies is that what do the artists need? Yes, they need space, they need time, they need money. But what's unique about all what we do is that we really do put artists first. Yes, artists do serve on our board, so they have a voice at the table, they have some power at the table. But what about like the public programming needs? What about the exhibition opportunities? What about the curatorial visits? We do, constant community building with our artists, current and alumni, so it's not just the core residents that are in our space, it's also the outside residents that, come from other spaces. Earlier when we were all talking on the Zoom, particularly for the Miami resident, pretty much all the artists have somehow touch pointed Locust, Bakehouse, Oolite. So we're here to really support artists, and that's what we do, is that if the artist wants to go away to Aspen, Colorado to work at the world-class ceramics, kiln that is at Anderson Ranch, I mean, that kind of program did come from artists saying that we want to leave Miami, and so I think that is kind of what we're trying to focus on is what are the needs? Are there like small needs that we can do or big needs? And one in particular, of course, is the need for financial support on housing. And so we're really proud to say that with a recent grant from Knight Foundation, the new residents that are coming in next year will be receiving a $1,000 housing stipend each month for going towards rent, which I think, again, we want to keep the ecosystem alive. We want to continue sustainability, and we want them to stay here. So, yes, that's it.
And so you're operating in a slightly different ecosystem because you're not in Miami proper. You're further north in Florida. So tell us a little bit about how, the artist origins shaped what you all do.
Well, our founder, Doris Sleeper, was a painter, sculptor, and an environmentalist. And so our residency is situated on 69 acres of protected land. So we have natural wildlife. We also have a lot of indigenous plants there, and a lot of we have on-site chefs as well during residency. So we work with local farmers for our food. We also have herbs that are grown on campus that are used for the meals as well. And so a big focus for Doris Sleeper was to actually make sure that the residency was interdisciplinary. And at the time, which when she was working, she found that was not existent in other programs. And so with the residency, we do include mentoring artists from 3 different disciplines. The mentoring artists also do the application review, so I don't have a hand in that as well. I don't see the applications, and they review the artists that they want and choose the artists that they want to attend the residency and work with for 3 weeks. We also vet our mentoring artists with what we call the National Council, which is actually an arm of the board, and they work with the directorial staff to pull names of mentoring artists, and we also gather mentoring artist recommendations from past residents and mentoring artists and associate artists, which is what we call the mentees. And we go through the list and basically curate each year from those lists. So we have artists coming from visual art, performing art, literary art, artists working in environmental arts, and also who focus on social practice. And so with that, all of the things that Doris Leap were intended to have are still in place. Something else that has come from artists during this time too is actually having a point of creating community agreements each residency, so that, and this has come up multiple times, especially people coming out of the pandemic and really just being in a different space and having different sets of boundaries and recovering from many things. It's been really important to establish that in each residency, and it's something that we're implementing with a mediator now.
How does that work? Like, when do all the artists arrive and then, have this conversation at the get-go, or is that, can you give an example of the sort of thing that would be dealt with and sorted out in a community agreement?
Yeah, so it's been different, but we've decided, each residency, but we decided to do it the first week. So the first night they arrive, we have a communal dinner, and it's kind of a way for everyone to introduce themselves and kind of break the ice, but we keep it at that, right? They just are meeting each other, getting situated in their space. The first day of the actual residency, we do have an orientation, and then we are setting aside 2 hours for them to meet on their own with a facilitator, so we're not dictating that process. And basically, what is happening is that they participate in a group workshop, and they also have a discussion on boundaries, consent, or being comfortable in a space where they're able to express their differences, their sensitivities, and also instructing people on how to interact with them, how they want to be engaged. And then that's really been an important part of the conversation, in addition to making art and being in a space, especially with people coming from different backgrounds, different countries, different cities, that everybody's coming from a different place. So it's been important to include in the programming.
So would an example of that be like, these are the studio hours where people can come and go, or would it be?
Yeah, no.
No.
So in the orientation, they get an orientation of the space, right? They have 24-hour access to the studio space. They share it, and they can discuss how they want to share that space. But community agreements is really more of a social practice thing, and also understanding people coming from different backgrounds, right? So it's not necessarily a part of being orientated to the physical space, but actually learning how to engage with the people that are there.
Personal boundaries.
And affordability has come up a little bit already, and I wanted to, it's a very, smooth segue into what are some of the biggest challenges facing artists in Florida, and in what ways are those unique to Florida, and in what ways are those emblematic of challenges that artists face everywhere?
Ron DeSantis.
You want to add anything to that?
We were talking about safe spaces, right? Residencies, and knowing that there are, artists are what we like to say, they are outside the box thinkers, they're bold, they're radical, they are traditionalists. They're all across the board. But, these are recent issues that have come up, and I've had artist friends who are saying, should I feel safe in Miami? There are rules and laws that are being placed where certain individuals are not safe in the state. And so I think that has come up as everyone having artist organizations in this state, that's a big factor when it comes to safety for some of our artists. So, yeah.
And how do you handle that? I mean, this is for all of you. How do you handle being in a state that may have laws that are hostile to artists that you're trying to welcome and make safe and make feel like they're able to do their best work?
We keep them in a bubble. No.
I mean, I think the challenges are, if for organizations that are mostly dependent on state resources and who are subject to institutions that get a lot of state resources, and then some of those regulations or principles, beliefs are imposed on them. I think that, we basically have, we don't get that much state money, but we also don't, it's not even just that. I think we just really believe that, we have no sort of censorship of our artists. I feel that, we have artists on so many that have immigrated to Miami from so many different countries for so many different political reasons. We have such a diversity of things, so there's always could be conflict. I think, what you do there and how you mediate those social boundaries or those cultural boundaries or how you do that, I think we're in a territory. I think a lot of the organization directors speak about what might be coming and how do we navigate this terrain, because, we're getting into an election season, and it's not just the current moment. We're in a globally turbulent time, and people would like to see institutions take positions on certain things. Artists are expecting their institutions to make statements about this or that. So I think it's really, it's a tough thing to navigate. I think encouraging open dialogue is a way that you could do it. We're careful not to use artists can use our space for whatever political statements they want to make. But the institution's it's not the voice of the institution.
Right.
We basically are, we're a charitable entity. We do not have a political aim, but but artists reflect the times, and the times are politically turbulent, and the times are very, and we shouldn't expect them not to do that. So I think that, allowing them to do their work and us defending the right for people to express themselves and to, just sort of carefully be attentive to the political environment so that I think we're in it as a community, because I think we all, we have these monthly meetings with the directors, and we talk about everything from bathroom signage to
drag queens.
To, and I think it's, and again, I don't know that it's just in Florida. It's just the politics of our nation now and the polarization, and it could be one side or this, But I think running any type of cultural institution, and even an educational institution now, is very tricky. Look what's going on with the president of the University of Pennsylvania, and I think that institutions get themselves into trouble when they try to make those statements or try to, be involved in the politics. You have to be political or politically savvy, but I think it's just a sensitive. It's sort of, the sensitivity of navigating that. And I think for us, it's been really important that we have people on our board who represent all, the various aspects of who understand the political world in which we exist. So that gives us at least to get good advice. And I think we talk to each other and try to do the best.
But I think too, banding together and having each other as a community, as Cathy was saying, we've had these director calls, but also just within all of the arts, we're part of bigger networks nationally. The agency and advocacy are things that we really try to encourage. When our politicians do get it right, we need to make sure we're saying so and thanking them. We do have a great, local government that's very supportive of our organizations and really playing an advocacy role within the state to sort of sustain our spaces and our missions. And, art is that space where we should be having difficult conversations in a safe way and really getting to find ways to connect and build tolerance and understanding in the world. I think that that connectivity, artists have their circles, but also as those who are running organizations are staying connected, keeps us strong.
And Sadie, what about you? I mean, how does the political environment affect you? Especially not being in an urban center like Miami.
Well, it's a bit more of a rural area, right? And being near Smyrna Beach, there is communications that happen with the people locally when we have a residency, so that they know that people are going to be in the area. We also have a network with our board that also is a part of that, and we also have the executive director here, Nancy, in the audience, who I've been in conversation with in depth about that, making sure that there's communication around that. And then the concerns of the artists, we have many emails that come in asking questions about safety and navigating coming to the space, because there is some travel that's involved, like to get there, right? It's not like it's in an urban setting where you can just arrive. They have to drive through lands that are unfamiliar for a lot of folks. So I just stay in communication with them about it. And then also, if there are any additional questions or concerns, I do bring it to Nancy or the board, so that there is a communication that's bigger than me, and also making sure that the artists have accessibility if they require that. We've also had mediated conversations with board and directorial staff and the artists to also address any issues that have come up that maybe have been challenging during the residency, especially, which is why we do have the community agreements in place now. Because it's important to address that before or at the beginning, before a situation may arise, and then also making sure that all the channels of communication are open and people feel comfortable to be able to express any needs or concerns that they have.
So it was clear from the beginning that we have, something of a critical mass of artists here. And so considering that you all are, in some ways the keepers of the keys of some of the, most exciting residencies in affordable space in Florida, if I were an artist who wanted a residency or access to this kind of space, what can I do to improve my chances?
I would say follow directions on the application.
Get your application in before midnight.
These are great. Keep them coming.
The last minutes are just and you're never good when you're last minute.
Working links, when you're submitting. PDF that opens and it's not 3 terabytes. Yeah, that works too.
And just, apply. Don't ever be afraid I didn't get accepted. The panels for us change every single time. You're going to have people have their eyes on your work, and one of them is usually a nationally based or local curator. That is an opportunity to, be seen. So, and do your research. Find out what are the right opportunities out there. There's a lot. We all post resources, that are out there. You do have to do the work of being an artist, and part of that is doing the research and putting that time, that administrative time into it as well.
Sometimes it's the work, really, that just strikes. I mean, we have a fun artist that found about our residency call on a Facebook ad. I mean, again, no formal training. They did not go to, the typical MFA program, just self-taught, saw a Facebook ad and said, oh, this looks interesting. Got in. I mean,
cool.
magic.
We've had wave makers come that way.
Magic.
None of us knew who they were. And, we're kind of a village in Miami. We all sort of know each other. And there have been people who just, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what we're here for.
All right, so we have 4 minutes before we turn it over to questions, which means each of you has 1 minute to answer the next and final question, which is the experiment question. So let's say that I looked under my chair and I found a pile of money, a lot of money, and I'm able to give you $25 million each.
You get a car, and you get a car.
So if your ultimate goal is to nurture artists and the local art scene, what do you do with that money? Let's just go down the line. Sadie, we'll start with you.
How much did you say you were giving?
25 million each.
Okay.
Each of us.
Each of you, yes.
So I would establish a robust exhibitions program where all the artists get stipends to create work, commissioned work. I would also upgrade a lot of our technology, because we also started in 1987. So there's some things that are still there from that time period, but they do work. But not everybody knows what those machines are because some of the artists are younger. So I'd like to have just both the best of both worlds. And I'll leave it at that.
Studios. I mean, artists need studios. So $25 million can get, be crafty. We can put some drywall, lots of drywall up, and get some artist studios.
Locust, one thing that distinguishes Locust here is we are the essential space in the arts ecosystem for an artist to produce and present ambitious new work. So I would really want to sustain Locust's presence in this community by buying a building and securing our future, and really being able to sustain what we do in a really meaningful way. When an artist shows at Locust, that always brings the next opportunity, and it's an essential space for all artists to be able to experiment and have that space.
Last but not least,
So
Cathy?
if we had 25 million, we've just completed a program brief anticipating the future renovation of our industrial bakery, the bakery building, and how that would really serve artists in today's contemporary practices. So I take half of it and put toward that, and the other half to actually getting our housing project off the ground. The challenge of affordable housing isn't, we have free land and potentially access to another acre and a half adjacent to us to really build 300 units of housing, but the financing of putting that together and doing anything really that makes a difference to the neighborhood and to the artists and to the people who engage with it. I think that extra $10 million would really help us, seal a really great project that really not only provides needed living and workspaces for artists, but also really connects to the greater community in a way that uplifts the entire neighborhood.
All right, so you heard it here first. If any of you have access to $100 million, think of all the things that could happen.
Somebody must know somebody here.
We're in the right place.
Exactly. So I'd like to open it up for questions. We've got a few. I think we have a mic coming around. So maybe we'll start from here and move in that direction.
Hi, my name's Todd, and I'm the executive director of an arts council in an hour north of New York City. We have a lot of people in our community who are very interested in starting residency programs, but currently there's not. So without the 25 million, if you were in the position of what could be the next steps to get yourself and help with us being able to support them and getting those residencies set up, what should we be doing to help them?
So, thank you. So I also serve on the board of ACA, which is Artist Communities Alliance, which is the national, national organization that has over 300 artist residencies. So there are best practices, protocols, guidelines of how to build residencies. There's also a robust network of individuals that you can call upon, rely on, potential funders. So really it's just about being part of the community of other residencies. And so ACA is...
And it's all sizes. Like it can be a house on an island and for two people to have a residency. It's a really wonderful organization.
It's a vision and a space.
Yeah, we have a lot of farmland.
Yeah, farm's great.
We're only an hour north of New York City, so certainly I know there's going to be an interest.
Right.
We just don't know how to set up those things. So thank you. I will be reaching out to ACA for sure.
Next question.
Hi, I think it's
Mic coming around.
There's a mic over there.
Oh, two mics. Wow.
Should I go?
Please.
Okay. Hi, my name's Sasha. I had a question. It started with Sadie, but it could really be for anyone. I know you said you're a DJ, so I assume you have your ear to the ground, tapped into the music world. And I was curious, is there a kind of crossbreeding of the music world and residencies, and how has music played a role in helping artists in terms of events or cross collaborations with musicians and things like that?
So we do have musicians that are mentoring artists at the residency. We have a music studio as well. A lot of them have been composers, arrangers. We will have some producers, DJs coming in the coming year. We actually have Andy C. coming in October next year, and we have Twilight Tone coming in 2025. So we have a range of that. And so even with the composers that you can apply, it just really depends on what kind of work you want to do during the residency. Are you a DJ also? Okay.
Me and my brother here.
Okay, yeah.
And music producers. but-
Okay, yeah. So it's just really what you want to work on during that time period. And it's really a time to experiment, right? So it doesn't have to be straightforward DJ work if you didn't want it to be. Like if you're looking to do more experimental sound performances like that, it's a great space to do that too. But we will have DJs coming up, so you should definitely consider applying.
And just a quick follow-up, is there a lot of cross collaborations between artists of different mediums and composers and things
Yeah,
of that
so that's
nature?
really up to you guys, right? So if you find someone that you want to work with, like you just make it happen. You have the conversation, you spend time together, and that's really why we have multi-disciplines at one time, so that you're able to make those connections with other people. But yeah, it's
We
open to
do
that.
all the time. We just had jam sessions in Cornelius Tulick's front porch with musicians and singers and poetry, poets. Right now, Tanya Candiani is on view. We're looking for someone who can mimic bird song through instruments. And at 6 o'clock at Untitled, we have a DJ who's part of an artist collaborative who's doing a performance with sound-activated boxing gloves to talk about the queering of sports. So we're constantly putting our artists together because it is about a collaborative practice to get to their vision. So we're constantly working. So just let us know who you are, and there may be an artist who's looking. Anybody can do bird mimicry out there? I'm looking.
Yeah, and we, while our space is mostly configured for visual artists, a lot of our artists, work are multidisciplinary, and a lot of them worked with sound, especially those who are now working in interactive media. So, in our newly configured spaces, we will have sound spaces, and we will have room for composers. We actually have had writers in residence. So I think, and our artists work, they work with musicians and composers and sound art. And we have 2 fabulous silos that have been turned into by artists. They used to contain the wheat that made the bread that the bakery produced. And so those have been used as musical instruments by many artists. So we welcome, sound into our space. And, we have we've had some site-specific. Recently one of our artists did a digitally mapped into these 2 ceiba trees in the back of ours, in our vacant lot. They they created digital mapping of the natural animals of Florida, I guess the indigenous animals like alligators, snakes, birds, and this and that were crawling in visual images up the trees. And then they went and they took recordings from the Everglades and actually the birds and stuff like that. And so it was like they turned the tree into a sound and visual, audio visual piece, which was really amazing. So, we have a lot of space for doing things with sound in our space, but we don't have a formal program, but we do respond to people who come to us with really good ideas and try to make them happen.
And we do have a new digital commission that's going to start, funded by the Knight Foundation. We've been doing these digital innovation lounges called the DIL. So you can kind of do glitch sessions, and then we have usually a music sound component, typically with DJs as part of that as well. And we've got a DJ next to us too, as well as Sadie.
I'm gonna apply. I'm applying.
Next question.
Hello, my name is Karina Tetik. I am an alumni from Oolite. First of all, I want to say something that maybe not many people know, and I'm profoundly thankful for this residency I could do, and I think that I can speak for more than 1,000 artists that have passed in these almost 40 years for the Art Center. And you can find some of them here at the Art Basel. You can find them all over the world. You can find them in the Miami local art scene. So I think that the residency programs, especially here in Miami, very well supported by the community and the Miami-Dade, and the cultural programs are something incredible. I live in other parts in the world, and this doesn't happen everywhere. So I think this is something very valuable that has to be maintained, and congratulate you because you are doing it. My question now is that I don't live in Miami anymore, and I would like to know if at the Bakehouse, at the Oolite, or at the Atlantic Center, do you have like a short residency programs for international artists that we can apply? I'm speaking about from weeks to several months, so I could come back or other people could come back and make a project related with the community and Miami.
So, I mean, it's a good question, and it's really great to have talent infused into our communities, and I think we all try to bring that in, especially, you know, I mean, what Lorie is doing at Locust, it is bringing in other talent working in tandem with Miami communities. But at Bakehouse, we have a partnership and a relationship with Villa Albertine in France, and we also send our artists to Cité Internationale in Paris. We don't have a dedicated program for out-of-town residents, but we do, you know, if somebody calls us in time and their project is really interesting, and I mean, we, you know, find a corner that somebody can work. So I think in our future campus, we will actually have 10 apartments that we'll own that will be earmarked for visiting residents, short and long term. And it might be an artist, it might be a poet, it might be a scientist, an environmentalist, a city planner, a mobility expert, you know, whatever. Just some to really, you know, keep our community actively engaged and connected. But I mean, we have an artist coming from New York for the month of January who's working on the project with the Whitney, who just needed a space to work in for a month, and his project was so interesting we just made the space. So I think that, you know, I think we all try to, or find a space for somebody. We don't have the resources right now to provide housing for somebody who comes from out of town. But oftentimes, even during Art Basel, when artists from out of town are making work to be put on display, or other exhibitions are taking place at museums and they need fabrication spaces. I mean, we, you know, have fabrication spaces in metal, wood, ceramic, printmaking, photography. I mean, they're rudimentary. I mean, they definitely produce what needs to be done. They're pretty scrappy looking, but they have served international and national artists who come to town when it's easier to make work here. But hopefully we'll do better at that and have a more formalized program.
Thank you very much.
We do offer at Atlantic Center, we do have rentals of the space, and we do have on-site housing, so that's an option if you wanted to do like a self-led residency.
We've got time for one more question.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jaime. I know some of you. My question is, with the post-COVID amount of ridiculous wealth that we've received here in Miami, what do you think needs to happen if those philanthropists are here? Excuse me, they're here today.
Stand up.
What do you think needs to happen?
Please stand up, yes.
For them to be able to commit to the city, locals, because as Lorie very well said, it is a village, and it's a very welcoming village. But how do we turn those tourists into villagers, if you will? In your opinion, how do you think that needs to be done?
This question comes up a lot, and I think the first and foremost is get to know your artist. Do studio visits. It's that simple, you know. We have open studios. Go on our website. But part of how you support a community is you have to be in the community. So so it's really that simple. Just do a couple studio visits and fall in love.
Yeah, you'll speak to your passions.
Yeah.
You know, tech people are all about incubators and new art, new ideas. You know, so hopefully they're coming to find us. It's a quintessential problem for museums as well, is how do they get all these people coming in to be visitors and members, et cetera. It's really trying to vie for attention and eyes, but you have to speak to people's passions. And if you know anyone in the tech center, it's your job to introduce them to the places you love as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also how we place ourselves in the community too. I mean, we need to be visible, and I mean, our artists, we try to encourage them, and we try to have tentacles out in the community so that we don't expect everybody. I mean, even though Bakehouse is the working home to 100 artists, we know that everybody can't come to Bakehouse or be there. So we try to strategically plan collaborations and partnerships that put us into communities that we want the attention of, whether it's the tech sector or the real estate developers or whoever's attention we want to be. We find a way to put our artists and or our programs in some of those spaces, and really actively us as the administrators and people who are raising the resources being in those communities, and also, you know, people coming to Miami want special experiences. They want to see Miami through the lens. I mean, people really like seeing the lens of Miami through the lens of an artist, creating these really highly curated small experiences. You invite a couple of people. Even, you know, there's always 1 degree of separation to get to somebody to know them, and trying to bring people in. And little by little, I mean, I think Miami's been a very much transactional community, a transient community. And I think, you know, we're seeing a change over time. It's a young city. So I'm really hopeful that you know, with the amount of attention that Miami has gotten, the amount of attention that the art community and the artists have gotten just this past week about just how the amount of talent that's here, that's the ascendancy of the artists, and yes, on the other hand, the paradox of affordability. I mean, everybody's reading all these newspapers, whether it's Forbes or the art newspaper, the New York Times, the Miami Herald, or, you know, ArtNet or Hyperallergic, whatever. People are reading these things. So I think we have to pick up on that messaging and make sure those stories don't go away when the fairs leave town, and that we really, you know, really start a movement about just how great the city is, how great the talent in the city is, and what is needed to support it.
All year long.
Yeah, all year round. Yeah. And then to really pick up on the messaging that's already been put out this week about just the amazing amount of talent in the community. And, you know, we want to keep it here. So, and then everybody, enlisting everybody can be part of this movement and part of the support system in some way. And we all have that responsibility if we really want to nurture and keep creativity in the city, an interesting city, which it is, you know, infinitely interesting. I think it's all of our responsibility to try to make those connections and make it happen.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for all of the work that you do this weekend, all year long. And thanks to all of you for coming.
Thank you.